Good evening. Okay, so kind of picking up from what I did in the last video with the basic skeleton that I use, I was going to go through how we could make a native to-do app that feels like what you get normally from a SPA framework, but that you can do without using a framework, that we can do just using native CSS, JavaScript, HTML. So I'm starting off with kind of the same things that we started with before. I have my index HTML. I have that site CSS with kind of the default stuff we did with that layout. And I have a empty JavaScript file. So I did go ahead and set my title here and put a header here ahead of time to reflect what we're doing. We're going to make this look nice once we get it working. But for right now, we're just going to try to get something that works and doesn't look too bad. So what we want is kind of a list over here of items on our to-do list. Maybe a little form at the top where they can put in a new item and a button to add the new item where they can press enter, and it would pop up on this list. Then each list item, we want a button on it to mark the item as completed, and probably they click on the item, it would mark it completed. And then we want a little button or some function to delete items. And that's what we're going to do. And then as far as saving this, we're going to do this without a server. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to store the to-do list in local storage of the browser. And so people visiting this, their to-do list will save, but it'll save in their browser instead of to the server, which is nice because they get to keep their own data. We're not taking it. The only downside to that is if they go to a different computer or they switch between their phone and computer, that won't travel with them unless they have some kind of browser extension that'll synchronize local storage between their sessions. But we're going to go ahead and do that. So the first thing we want to do after the heading is we want that text box across the top and a button, and then we know we want a list. So we can get that in here. So we'll just put a text box there. Okay. And then we'll put a button. We'll put add on it, and we'll save. And there's that stuff. And then under that, we're going to put a unordered list for the to-do items. Now we want this to be dynamic eventually, but for now we'll go ahead and put a little placeholder in just so that we can get things looking the way we want. We'll just work on getting one item looking the way we want, and then we'll work on making this actually work. So we'll just put first item here, and then we want a delete button at the end of it. So I think what I'm going to do is put that first one in a span, the text piece there. And then after the span, I'm going to put button. So I'll put a button, and we'll put an X on this instead of delete, just so it's a little X button. Okay, doesn't look very good, but this is basically what we want. So I think just about everything's there. So we can start working on making this thing work. So the first thing I want to do is think about which items on the page I'm going to want to interact with, either to get values from them or buttons I want to mark because I'm going to react to them. Now we can use selectors, or we can put IDs on the things that we want to use. This time I'm just going to use IDs, so I'll make it real easy to grab these. So I'll put an ID on this button and call it add button. And then I'm going to put an ID in this button. We're going to have to do something a little bit different here. So I'm going to actually not put an ID on that because this is going to be repeating. So we can't put a single ID on it because there's going to be more than one of these. But we'll deal with that in a moment. This list, though, we're going to be adding stuff to this list and removing stuff from this list. So I'm going to put an ID in this. And we're going to call this to-do list. And then finally, this text box up here, we're going to want to grab the input out of that. So we are going to actually, yeah, we'll put new item, maybe. Okay. And then the next thing I want to do is we want this, that when they type something in, if they hit enter, it should take 2. They shouldn't have to tab over to the button if they're using their keyboard. They shouldn't have to click on that. If they hit enter, it should work. And the way we can do that is if we put this all in a form, sorry. It'll look the same, but now hitting enter will hit the button. Now by default, you'll notice when we hit it, you kind of can't see it, but it's refreshing the page. So we don't want that, but we can prevent that. And we'll get to that in a moment. So I'm going to put an ID on this form. Add form. Okay. Some people like to use like a kind of Hungarian notation for this and prefix their IDs with form, you know, they'd call this form add and they'd call this next one maybe text item, the next one btn-add. I don't tend to do that. I tend to just name stuff based on what I would call it when I'm talking about it. But okay, so we have some stuff linked up there. So now we can kind of do an early thing of making this work. Now, the first thing I want to do is this list should be empty initially. So we don't actually want this list item there. However, I don't really want to build the item in script every time I need to add one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out, this part that I'm going to be kind of dynamically adding, and I'm going to put it in a template tag. So we can actually, we do want it out of the list because we're going to be emptying that list. So we'll just put it right underneath, and I'll just put a template tag. And this template tag will not render, it's just something that we can use later. So we'll put an ID on this, and we'll say, we'll call this item template. So now that we have that in a template, programmatically, you'll see we can just grab this little block here and add that as we need it. Okay, so now we kind of have our parts here. I think everything's broken up just about right. And I think we have everything we need. So I don't think we'll actually be adding anything else to the HTML, believe it or not. We will have this animated and looking really nice, but I think the HTML is done. So we're going to leave the CSS alone for the moment. When we get to it, we're going to, you know, make some stuff to make this look pretty, support dark mode, things like that. But for right now, let's just get this thing working. So the first thing we know needs to happen is when they click add or press enter, we want to do something. So first thing we need to worry about is this add form. But since we know, we actually don't need anything on this ID, because the ID, or on this button, sorry. The button's always going to submit the form. So really, we're not trying to look at the button. We're trying to look at the form and see when the form gets submitted. That's the event we kind of want to react to. So we don't need to bind anything to the button. The button already implies the form submission. So we're going to be acting on the form, on an event of the form. So we shouldn't need that ID. All right. So like I said, first thing we need to do is attach that form thing. However, one thing I'm going to do with the CSS, or with the JavaScript, is right up front, I know based on which items we put IDs on here, there's 4 items here with IDs on them, and those are the things we're going to be interacting with, and I already know that. So, just in our index.js, we're just going to make variables for those. So I'm going to make 4 constants. I'm going to make one for add form, and we're going to set that equal to document get element by ID add form. And then we got three more things. Just gotta remember what they're called. So we got new item, to-do list, then item template. New item, to-do list, and it was item template? Yeah. Item template. So now I've kind of got those grabbed. We need to fix these to be the right IDs to grab. And I can do this safely because these are things that are always going to be on the page. We're never going to be removing these, and they're not going to be changing, so we can just grab them up front, and we know they'll be there, and we can refer to them using these variables. You'll have to excuse my sinuses today. Like a lot of people up here, I am struggling with the constant temperature changes. Okay. So now we got those, and like I said, the first thing we need to do is do something when this form's submitted. So we're going to take add form, and we're going to add an event listener. And the event we're going to listen to is submit, and then we're just going to bind a function to that for handling that. Now, on these event listeners, there's a parameter called e. And in JavaScript, we can include that parameter if we're going to do something with the event. But if we're not, we can omit it if we want. We are, in this case, going to be doing something, which is we are going to be doing e.prevent default right up front. And what that'll do is that'll make it so that when they click the submit button or when they push enter, it will not refresh the page. It will not assume this is a form that goes back to the server. So with that done, we should be able to type here and hit not refresh. So you see now if I push enter or if I click the add button, there's no refresh happening, and you can kind of tell because this box isn't getting blanked out. So we have prevented the form submission. We're just using the form now to get that grouping behavior and get that behavior where pushing enter anywhere in the form also implicitly kind of does the same thing as clicking the add button. It causes this submit event. And we can test that that's happening by just doing a console log here, and we'll just write form submitted, and then we can make sure that works over here by pushing F12 to bring up the browser console and make sure this is on console. So if it's not, you can pick it there. And then when we hit enter, it says form submitted, and when we click the add button, it also says form submitted. So that is working. So what we need to do in here is we need to make a new item in the list. So we're going to make the new item by using the item template. So we're going to take item template and we're going to clone it. And we're going to put that in a variable called, we can't call it new item because we called the form element that. We'll just say item equals item template.clone node. And let's just try for now, just adding that item as it is without customizing it. So every time they click it, it's going to add a new copy of this first item thing. So now we have it cloned. We can do to-do list dot, bear with me here. Children, no, it's add pen child, sorry. So let's just try appending that. Okay, now we don't want to append the whole item because the item will be that whole template tag. We want to actually append what's in the template tag. So we are going to append item dot first child. I think we should be able to do content as well. But the reason we're not getting a good autocomplete here to see that. We're going to fix that right now, since I was talking about using the LSP to get types here. If I check my LSP, it just says that that's a node. It doesn't know that it's a template element because clone node just returns a node. It doesn't, the type system doesn't really know that I'm cloning a template. So we can kind of put a hint here to tell it. And we do that by putting a type comment like this. And we'll say that the type here is HTML template element. Now, if we check our, if you hover your mouse over in your VS Code, or in my case, if I hit K, it'll show that's an item or an HTML template element. And now, I should get that content. Item dot, we'll do first child for now. I think that'll work anyway. It won't, because that's gone. Sorry, bear with me here. Check my reference here. Sorry, I should have this stuff off the top of my head, but it's been a moment. No, it looks like we can just add item. So let's see what that does. So let's try that. So now every time they submit the form, it should just append a new child. So now we have that done. If we click add, it doesn't appear to be doing anything. Let's take a look. It is content, I think. We do need to call true here. There we go. Sorry, I needed to pass true there. If we look at clone node, there's a subtree thing. You need to pass true to a clone node to tell it to make a deep copy, meaning we want all the stuff in between. So now that's working. We can add these, and it'll just keep adding them. Now we need to get these X buttons working to delete them, and we don't want to add first item. We want to add whatever's in the box there. So we're going to start off by just cloning the node, and then we're going to customize it a bit. So we're going to do item, and we're going to look at what we need to customize. And for this one, we need to change what's in the span to be whatever they put in the text box. So we're going to do item dot query selector span to get that span, and then we can set its inner text to whatever's in that new item text box. So we just do new item dot value. Okay, and then after they do that, we probably want to clear the box. We'll take care of that in a minute. Okay. Okay. Setting inner text. Cannot set properties of null. Okay, so this item, I think what we'll do here is we're just going to put content up there so that we're getting that content, and then maybe now that'll be fine. There we go. Okay, so now it's putting a new element. It's kind of customizing the new element based on what I have in the box. We do want this to reset every time. So they are going to have to type. And then we're going to do one more thing to make this work really nice. So first thing, let's get that text reset. So after we're done doing that, we'll set new item.value equal to an empty string. And now when we type and hit add, it goes back to being blank, and we can just keep typing stuff and get all kinds of different list items. Okay, so that's good. Next thing we want to do is we want to make this delete button work. Now, every time we clone this, we need to add an event handler to the button for the new item to have it delete itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab that button by doing item, query selector, button, and that'll get the button that is underneath that is a child of the current item that we're doing. And we're going to add an event listener, click, and then we're going to attach a event. So we're just going to make our little lambda there. Okay, so when they click this, we want to remove this node from the list. So we know what node it is because it is this right here. Item is the node. Should actually say this is no longer an HTML template element since we're getting content. This is actually an HTML. I think it's called li element. It might be list item. Let me just double check here. Yep, no, it's HTML li elements. That's the right type. Yeah, we're just going to tell the to-do list to remove us. So for that, we just do to-do list dot remove child, and we're just going to pass ourself, so item. And this works because of closure, because items declared out here to be the thing that we're going to add. It's okay to refer to it inside of this lambda, and it will be pointed to the same thing. Everything's by reference in JavaScript, so this kind of code to remove ourselves should work. So that should do it. So now we do that. Got our bunch of items, and now if we click these, should remove. Okay, it is not letting us do this. Now what we can do here is instead of using item, because I think possibly once we append it, it's kind of changing the reference, contrary to what I just said. So instead, we can do e dot, I believe it's source, or sorry, target. E dot target. So what that is when this click event gets registered, the E thing is it's the event arguments, and one thing that's always in the event argument is the property target, which always refers to the element that raised the event. So that hopefully should work. So now, okay, we're still having this problem where it doesn't think it is a child of that. So let's do some console logging. We're going to log E, first of all. Now, okay, we are getting a pointer event, which is good. And if we scroll down to target, it says button. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. It is referring to the button that was clicked. We're not trying to remove the button. We're trying to remove the button's parent. So I think we can do this. Okay, there we go. So now the target is the button. The parent element of the button is the containing li, which is what we want removed. So now we're in pretty good shape. Everything's kind of doing what we want. The only thing we don't have is we did want that when we click on these, it kind of just marks them off or checks them off. Also, this thing still looks bad, so we'll take care of that in a moment. And we're not saving stuff to local storage, so we got a little bit more script to write here. Thanks for bearing with me. I didn't really script this out. I kind of wanted to work through this and show you the process. So let's go ahead and get that removed. And what else were we? Oh yeah, we want that when we click on the span, that the span gets crossed out. We'll just say a line through it, maybe. Okay. So we want that when we click on the span itself, so on this text, it crosses it off. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to just put a click handler on the span and do something with that span when they click on it. So the easiest way to do this would be, since we're just trying to change the style of the span, but also kind of mark it as done or not done, there's a few ways we can do it. One way to do it is with a checkbox. The other way to do it is with adding this kind of class. But I think what we're going to go with actually is a checkbox. So instead, we're going to make this thing a checkbox instead of just being text here. It'll have a little checkbox next to it. We're not going to leave it looking that way, but we're going to make it work that way so we can kind of see what's going on. So this also saves us from writing some script. So what we're going to do is we're going to put input type equals checkbox right into there. And that's just going to say whether or not this thing's done. And because we want this thing to, even when they click on the text, it should affect the checkbox. The way we do that is by making a label. So we're going to change the span to a label. We'll have to update some script code to reflect that. And then on the label, we're going to say this is for, and we got to point it at this checkbox. This is going to get complicated because of the fact that we're going to have multiple of these, so we don't really have a unique name for it. So another trick for this is, instead of doing a for, if we put the checkbox inside the label, that will do the same thing. So I think I'm going to do like this. Because I don't like text just being adjacent to nodes like that, it's okay to do it, but I'm going to put this in a span. Just think it looks a little bit better. Okay, so now everywhere we were referring to the span, we need to now talk about it as the span inside the label. So we got that. So now here where we're doing a query selector for span, we're just going to say label span. So that selector means find the label and then find the span inside the label. If we want to note that it's direct child, we can use that selector. But we don't need to. Any span under the label, it's okay to be a little bit. Okay, so first span inside of a label that is under the item will get updated, so that's all right. All right, so let's see what that looks like. Okay, now these things have checkboxes on them, and we can mark some of them done. And it's working, even if we click on these. Okay, so we have our things that are done. Like I said, it looks ugly right now. We can remove things from the list, or we can mark them done. Either one. So it looks ugly, but all of our functionality is there. We can add items, remove items, and mark them done and not done by clicking on them. Okay. Now, the only thing that's not happening here is we're not saving and loading from local storage. So before we go and make this look pretty, let's take care of putting it in local storage. One thing you might have noticed here that will be different from you if you're coming from frameworks is that I don't have a list of items up here where I'm making an array of items that are, of this form where we're the name is item 1 and I have it done. That's, I'm not making this model object that I'm binding to the UI. The reason why I'm not doing that is that while everything has been MVC forever for every framework, and that's the way everybody's doing things these days. We don't, first of all, we don't need to do MVC, period. That is not, you know, something that we always have to do. Two, even if you want to, we do already have a state. Well, we do already have a model. We already have a place where we store data, and it's reflected on the UI. And that place where we store data that's reflected on the UI is HTML. It's stored in the labels, and the checkboxes have state. So we don't need this like extra backing variable. We can just store things right on the document object model. That's kind of what it's for. So we don't need a separate thing. All right, but that does make things a little bit trickier when we want to load things from load and save things from local state. So to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a function called load from local storage, and then we're going to make a function called save to local storage. Now, with local storage, we can control the representation of how we save things. We could just save the stuff as it is. We'd have to do a little bit more work because technically the inner HTML doesn't really carry all the state, like whether or not the checkboxes are checked. So we're going to decode them into little items that we're going to put in local storage or save. But first, before we go implementing this load and save from local storage, let's look at where we need to save it. We need to save to local storage every time this list changes. So we know every time they add an item, after we add the item, we should save to local storage because it's been changed. And every time they remove, so in this inner remove function, we need to save to. And that's all the times we need to save because that's the only times they update things. There's one other time, which is when they check the checkbox, actually. So we do need to do something about when they check that checkbox. We need to do that save to. So we're going to need to get the checkbox. We're going to have item, query selector, and that checkbox is in label input. It's the only input in there, so we can just use input. If you want, you can do this to be a little bit more clear about what's going on. We can do the input has an attribute with the type of checkbox if we want to. And then we can do add event listener. And I think for this we can use changed. Might be change. We'll find out real quick here. And first, just to make sure I got that right, I think it is just change without the D. So just to check, I'm just going to do a console log here and see if this is working. So now we have that. We can add some items, and let's see if we're getting that event. Yeah, checkbox changed every time the checkbox is changed. So it goes up to 4. We also want to check if they hit space, that does it too. The space is firing the event. We can see that number going up there. I know it's very tiny on the screen if you're following along, but it is updating. So that seems to be working. I don't need to log this. All we need to do when they update the checkbox is save it to local storage. Okay. So now we are saving every time they add, delete, or change whether or not the object is checked off. Like I said, that's not going to be a checkbox. It's going to look real nice. It's going to look kind of like what you'd expect. Just we're doing the UI less, so just going to have to bear with me and use your imagination. So first, let's work on save to local storage first. So when we go to save to local storage, we need to look at the whole list and kind of loop through it and get all the items out and put them into local storage. So we can take that to-do list and we can do query selector all and tell it we want all the LIs. We can also just iterate through children, but query selector all are very fast, and this takes care of it in case we end up, for UL we really wouldn't add items, so we could do that, but we'll just leave it this way. And we can do this two ways. We can do it with the for each out here, or we can do for const item of, or you can do it with calling dot for each and passing a lambda there. But we'll try to keep it simple here. And we are going to make sure we do for of, because for in, of course, will give us the keys. For of gives us the values in JavaScript. So we're looping through the items, and then we're going to get kind of the serialized copy of the item. So we just want to get the text out and whether or not it's checked. So I'm going to call this serialized item. It's not quite right, but it's okay. And we're going to make that a new object, and we're going to say the serialized item has two properties. It has the text, which will be equal to the item dot. So we need to get the item, do that query selector to go get the span. So label span, the span inside the label, and get its inner text. That'll be the text. And then we'll make a thing called done, and that will be that checkbox. We'll get the item, look at query selector for kind of the same one up here. That checked. So that should pull out that serialized item. And now that we have this serialized item, we can, let's see here, we're going to build up an array of these. So actually I'm going to step back. I don't want to do this for loop. We're actually mapping these items onto this. So I am going to move this to doing a lambda. So we are going to do map here, and we're going to say item like that. And I'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so now instead we are taking all the LIs and we are mapping the LIs onto these serialized items. Just going to say that this returns. All right, so that will map all of our LIs onto this list of serialized things. And that map is going to give us an array of all the LIs mapped into this objects of text and done. So we'll just call this serialized items equals. Do one of these. All right, and let's see how our local storage is looking before we even save it. Let's just do a console.log of serialized items. And we should kind of see that update every time. Query selector all dot map. Okay, I think this is a thing where this returns this nodeless thing that we have to convert it to an array. So I gotta remember how to do that. Okay, yeah, the easiest way is just with since it's iterable, we can use this dot syntax thing to just kind of turn it into an array. The way we do that is just surround it in square brackets and then do this. And where's it? 2 dots. That's 3 dots. So what that should do is that should to-do list query selector all, it'll take that returns an iterator, and by putting that spread syntax in between the brackets, that will realize the iterator into an array, hopefully. Serialized items is not defined. Okay, we forgot to put a let here. We are going to do const since we're not changing it. Well, let's see what's in there. All right, it just has one item in it. It has a text of that and false. And now it has one item with a text of that and true. So we can see this is updating. We add items to it. It's going to give it every time we do save. So now it says there are, let's just do 6, 7, and 8. Okay. So the last one we have here, the last 3 are true. So we got the serialized thing working perfectly. So that serialized items is what we want to save to local storage. Now, unfortunately for local storage, we cannot just save arbitrary objects there. We can only save strings, but it's JavaScript. So we can take our serialized items and turn that to a string, a JSON string. So all we're going to do, and now this actually will be serialized items, is on the outside of this, we're just going to put JSON dot stringify, little parenthesis there, little parenthesis there. Okay. And you'll even see that now this won't be giving an object, it'll be giving a string. So now you can see it's a string. So now we have a single string that is JSON of everything we've been doing. So perfect. So now we can just take that string and stuff it in local storage. We just do that with local storage dot set item, and we just need a name, a key, and a value. So we're just going to call this ToDo items, and we'll save that serialized items there. And that should save them in local storage. And we can check that using our debugger here. So let's see, test, letter test. Okay. So if we go over here, sorry, Chrome, it's been a minute. We're going to go to application and go down to local storage, expand that out, take a look, and there we have it. ToDo items has a value of that. And it looks like the debugger is even smart enough to realize that that is JSON and let us kind of look at it as an object. So we can see that it's saving our stuff. And as we add items, that's getting updated in local storage. So that's there now. So every time we're adding and removing stuff, should make sure the remove works. Yep. Every time we're adding, removing, or even updating the check state, that's getting reflected in local storage by that save function. So our save works. Now we just need the load to work. So when do we need to call load? We only need to call load once, and that is when the page initially loads. So we do not need to put that in an item. This script runs when the page loads. So we're just going to call it right down here, load from local storage. Okay. So now we kind of just need to a little bit do the opposite here. It's going to be a lot more fun because we got to build a list from local storage. So in load from local storage, we are going to go get that out of local storage. So we're going to do our items are local storage dot get item do items. Well, first thing we need to do is make sure that that's not null. The first time they go to the site, it's just going to be null because they haven't interacted with this yet. So we have never saved anything to local storage. So for that, we're going to check if it's null. So if items, because it's JavaScript, we really can just do this. If not items, return. Because null is falsy, and any other value in there will be true, so it won't return. So that'll kick us out early. Now we could, if you don't like doing early exits, we could do if items and then do the rest of the function in a big block, but I would rather deal with local returns than have extra indentations just to avoid it. Okay, so now we have our items, and they are in a string though, so we do need to wrap this in JSON.parse. And now they are actual items. So we can check console.log items. Now, let's look at our console. And we can see that when you load the page, it does load it does show the items in the console. Now what we need to do is we need to add them all to the list. So this is going to look a lot like what we're doing up here. We're going to just repeat some code here. It's not exactly the same. It's okay to have repeating code sometimes. We don't need to pull everything out into a function. So this is all right. So what we're going to do is we're kind of going to down here loop over the items and kind of do the same thing we're doing up here. And I think for right now I'm just going to yeah, maybe we will pull that out into a function. We'll see. So I'm going to loop over the items, item of items, and then we're going to kind of do that stuff. So let's see if we can get this pulled out into a function. So this is where we add items, and I guess the problem here is this is calling save to local storage, and I don't really want to do all that. You need it on the callbacks though. I think we're just going to take this amount, this stuff here, and we're going to put that in a function called add item. So yeah, we'll put it up here actually, I think. Function add item. Okay, we're going to put some arguments on there because we do not always want to be getting this from the text box. When we're loading it from local storage, we want to get it from the item thing. So instead, we're going to make that an argument. So we're going to say this takes an argument of the text, and we're actually going to have it pass an argument for whether or not the thing is completed. When they're initially adding one, we're always going to assume that's false, but when we're loading from local storage, we need to pull back whatever they put in there. So we're just going to call this done, and new item dot value. We're going to place with text, and then done, we're going to have to set on that checkbox. So we're just going to take this here, and we are going to set that kind of at the very end. So we're going to set that checked equal to whatever they passed in for done. Okay. Okay, that looks pretty good. So now we just up here need to replace that with a function call. So for this one, we are going to do new item.value for them adding a new item, and then done is just going to be hard-coded to false when they add a new one. But when we go to add an item from local storage, we want to do things a little bit differently. We're going to call add item, and we're going to pass the item dot, what do we call that property? I think we call that name. Check in the code, or I can check here, text and done. Okay. So we're item dot text, item dot done. All right, we can already see this kind of shaping up. So now we have our load and save from local storage. So when our page loads, we're loading everything from local storage into the list. And every time they interact with the list, we're calling save to save it. So now everything we do here should just kind of live between refreshes. So I should be able to paint this list up, hit refresh, and have everything still intact. So my to-do list now is saved. So now we have a full application that they can use. Even if they close the browser, come back, this will be in whatever state they left it in. So that is about it for our JavaScript and our HTML. So the only thing we have to do now is get this looking pretty, and I saved it for last, and it is kind of the fun part. So let's work on that. All right. So everything else can be in the CSS. We're done with our HTML now. We've made our full app. We just use the DOM to store our data, and just local storage to kind of get that pulled in and out from the UI. We kept it nice and simple, and I think if you look at the code here, it is not that much longer than what we would have done with a framework. And we save many kilobytes, maybe even megabytes, depending on your framework, of backing code. We have no libraries here. This all just works on its own. So now let's make it look pretty so it doesn't look bad. We're going to go over to the site CSS, and let's go top to bottom. So first thing is this looks bad. So I think probably I want this heading centered, and then I want this to-do list kind of centered. We'll do like a fixed width thing where it doesn't need to be very wide, but we kind of want it in the center. So we'll say maybe 600 pixels for how wide we want this guy to be. And then this form as well, we want to be 600 pixels. So we just need to style this form and this UL. So they both have IDs, so we could just do it that way, and that's probably best. So let's do add form and to-do list. Now, I'm not going to do it over here in site. Site is supposed to be stuff that's just generic for my whole site. It's a little bit weird because this is only a single page, so it's kind of silly to have this site.css. I still like it because this kind of separates overall styling I'm doing from stuff that's specific to the page. Even though this is one page, so you're kind of like, well, it's all specific to the page. But hopefully you can kind of see a little bit the difference. So we're going to be styling our stuff out here. So we're going to do add form and give that some styles. And we're going to do to-do list and give that some styles. So first thing we wanted to do is these are both in main. So we can also do some stuff here with main to lay them out. There's a few ways for us to do that 600 pixels centered thing. So I'm going to show the old way and then maybe a new way that's a little bit easier. So first, disregard that main one up there. And what we could do is just say this has a width of 600 pixels and a margin left and margin right. Or if you want to do margin inline, that means margin left and right. It's just a shortcut property that means both. And we set this to auto. That should make that 600 pixels and centered. You kind of can't really tell because the stuff is not really 600 pixels wide yet, but you will be able to. And then we can do the same thing here. We can say this one is also 600 pixels and centered, and we'll kind of get that. Like I said, it's a little bit hard to appreciate right now without this going across the whole span, but we'll take care of that in a moment. But first I want to do this a little bit different. This is a little bit the old way to do it, and I don't really like this because it's a little bit strange having these do these auto inline things. Instead, I want to give those the width that they have. By the way, we can put a border on this temporarily just so we can see that. Let's do red. Let's do red so I remember to get rid of it. So now you can see how wide those are. So instead of centering them with, margin and line and auto, which gives us the centering we want, instead, we're just going to say their container, main, is going to show them as a flex box. So we're going to set this to display flex. Now, if we just leave it as flex, it's going to try to put them side by side. So we do need to set flex direction to tell it you are a flex box that arranges its children top to bottom. So column like that. Now, this doesn't look very different than what we had so far, but bear with me. Now that we've done that, we can tell main has an implicit width of 100%. Well, kind of. It's less than 100%, but it has a width that takes up the whole available space. So we just need to tell it to center its children, so we can just do align content. So line content, I think it's line items. Center. And that will center all the items that are laid out in this flex box. And as we resize, everything will look right. It's There we go. That's looking a little bit nicer, so you can see this kind of grow and shrink. So that's doing about what I want now. Now the next problem I have is this form. I want it going all the way across. I want the add button like way over here, and this text box going all the way across. So for that, we're going to tell this form that it also has a display of flex. And this one, we don't need to set the flex direction. You can see it kind of did something neat there, which is it made the add button take up the whole space, so it's aligning the items right. Now the only problem we have is that it's not stretching out the text box. All we have to do to fix that is under the add form, we can tell it that the input, there's only one here, so we can do this nice and lazy. We say the input has a flex grow of 1. And that means that the input box will grow to take up as much available space as it can, and the add will not, because it has the default flex grow of 0, which says it doesn't try to take up more space. It is just however wide it needs to be and no wider. So now this is taking up the whole space. We're good with it, and in fact we can get rid of the border on that now because we can see that it's right. Now the to-do list, I'm probably going to leave some kind of border on because, well, we could do border or background color. For now, we'll do a border on it because the text is not necessarily going to take up the whole thing. We might want the X buttons way off to the right, in which case we would. So I think we'll do that. Let's put the X buttons way off to the right on each item. And then we'll do some stuff to make where we can tell where the ends are. We'll get there. All right, so next is this to-do list. These items in this list are not looking good. First thing is they have these bullet points on them that because we made it a UL, put border items on it. We did the right thing making it a UL. It is an unordered list, but we don't like that kind of look and feel. So we can just tell it that the list style on this guy is none, and that will remove the dots there. And you notice there's still like some weird padding here. So we can also set padding to 0. And now it is an unordered list, but you wouldn't be able to tell. So it's semantically correct, but it doesn't have to look that way. All right, now laying out this stuff. On each item, I have a checkbox, a span, and a button. And if I remember right, yeah, really we have a label and a button. The checkbox and span are children of the label. So we have 2 things in this list item. And we can use flex again here to tell it that this first item should expand and the second item shouldn't. So that label we want to expand, but the list item, or sorry, the button we do not want to. So let's go in to-do list and say the labels inside there, or sorry, the LIs inside there should have a display of flex. And within the LIs, we have label, labels should flex grow 1. The label should expand to take up all the space, which will bump the buttons way off to the edge. Those buttons we're going to make look nice. We're also going to get rid of the check boxes. We're going to instead have it strike through, or we can put a little check mark next to it. I think I'm going to do the strike through thing this time, but you can do either one. All right, so I think we got those looking the way we want. We need to change these buttons. We need to get rid of the check boxes. So let's focus on this first. Let's get rid of this checkbox and make it just show a strike through on it. So we still want the checkbox there because we want the functionality of it being a toggleable thing that can be on and off. So, but we're going to hide the checkbox. But first, let's take care of how can we make this strike through when it's checked? And we can do that with a pseudo class on our list item. So what we can say is really the span is what we want. So this is going to be a tricky CSS thing here. but bear with me. So we want the within a list item, a label that has a input checked. If we have a label that has an input checked, we want to get the span under that label and set its text decoration to, I think it's through, I don't remember what it is for crossing out a text. CSS strike. Line through. That's right. I knew it was something named weird. Line through. So this says find any inside an LI if there's a label that has an input that's checked. So that lets us drill down in and then come back out because we're saying label that has something in it. And then under the label that matches that criteria, we have a span. So this should work. So if we do that and check these, okay, it is not working. Might have done that wrong. Okay, let's see. List item has a label which has an input that is checked. A span underneath it should have a text decoration line through. Should be right. Just make it red just to check. Make sure there's nothing going on there. We can do this, but we shouldn't need to. There's only one input under there. So, all right, let me double check my reference one that I did before to see if I'm missing something silly here. Oh, I think something silly here. I think we don't put those parentheses. Here we go. All right, we don't want this red color though. So now all the ones that are checked are stricken through. Using that little style there. I don't know if that looks good. We will do that for now. I think it looks good enough. So now that we're doing that, I don't like that, you know, you get, you have that cursor that shows you that something's clickable. We want a lot more of those. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say all buttons have a pointer cursor. So that'll make it that little hand thing when we're over a button. And I want these spans to have that cursor as well. These labels, I suppose. So we'll just go down here to label, and we'll also say that that has a cursor of pointer. Good. So now everything that's clickable kind of looks like it. This label's kind of spanning all the way across, so anything we hit other than that plus, or other than that X button is going to do that. So, all right, so let's get rid of the checkbox now that we have that functionality. We want the checkbox present, but we just don't want it shown. So what we're going to do is we're just going to come down here, and in our label, the input, we're going to set its display to none. Now they're gone, but they are still checkable. So they are still behaving like checkboxes, but we can just click them and mark them as done. I think one thing I did before here is that, as well as crossing them out, we kind of make the text a little bit of a lighter color to show that as well. So we can set text decoration align through and set its color to something like a really light gray, like AAA maybe. Maybe even further. That's probably too light. Let's see. Yeah. Maybe A was good. Okay. So now it's kind of grayed out and crossed off, so I can see which items I've crossed off. Just get a little bit nicer looking items, then we can see maybe. Okay, yeah, I don't think that gray's light enough. It's not quite there for me. Let's try that. Okay, I think that's good. The ones that aren't done stand out, and the ones that are crossed off kind of look muted here. So I think I like that a little bit better now. We don't have this check boxes. We have this kind of crossed off looking behavior. Looks pretty good. So we got that style all working the way we want. And yeah, everything's still saving the local storage. We're just doing declarative work now to make this look pretty. All right, next thing is, I think I do want this border. I don't want it to be red, and I would like some padding between it. So let's work on that border. Let's say we give it a color of some kind of light gray, a little bit, yeah, maybe that's fine. We'll work with it. And then we'll put some padding. I want padding all around on all four sides, so I can just do padding and set that equal to 20 pixels. Oh, I need to get rid of that padding 0. Okay. All right, so now we got a 20 pixel padding all the way around. Next thing we can do, of course, is around that border. We just do that with border radius and then tell it, you know, how many pixels the circle at the corner should be. So something like 5 pixels. Get some nice rounding. Maybe we want it a little bit more pronounced. 20. Yeah, that looks kind of okay. That's maybe a little too rounded. Depends on your taste, but we'll leave it there. You know, so we could adjust. And let's get one more thing done before I wrap this up. I think I'm going to do a part 2 where we're going to add animation to deleting these and to checking them off so that we have a really pretty app. But I'm going to get this at least decent looking before we wrap up for this one. All right, so these buttons, let's make the buttons red with a white X. And let's round out those buttons a little bit more so they're not those squares. So let's see what we can do. We're going to come down. The LI has a label in it and a button, right? Yeah, button is next to label. So we're going to come down there, do button, and we're going to just set its border to 0. Okay, and then we're, I might put a border on it, but set its background color to red and its color to white. Okay, even though there's no border showing, we can still set a border radius. Do something really high if we want to make it just a circle. That does not look great. We can make this look more like a circle if we wanted to by just making sure the width and height are the same. To do that, we can give it a width of, get something that looks good here. Okay, 40 pixels, a little much. 30 pixels. So once we get close, we're going to set the height to be the same thing. 20 pixels was too little. 30 looks a little much. 25 maybe might be okay. I'm going to go with 30. Okay, so with 30, now we can say the width is 30 and the height is also 30. And then we get these universal, well, these circle buttons because that radius. They're kind of nudged up against each other. We're going to take care of that. We're just going to put some padding in between the list items. So all we're going to do for that is put padding on this, and this could be very little bit, just to space them out a little bit. There we go. And if we want to, just so we can see where these things line up, we could also on each list item put a border bottom, and we could do like 1 pixel dotted up that. And that looks pretty okay. I think the last one doesn't need this though. So how can we take care of that? All we have to do is using CSS nesting again. We're just going to do ampersand, meaning an li that is the last child. We're going to override that border bottom to say it's 0. So and now there's no bottom border on the last one, just all the rest. Okay. All right, so that's looking a little bit nicer now. It's still, it's pretty simple, but it looks a bit nicer. We'll work on this add button and we'll center that header. And then we will call that that. I about got this right. I do want this header a little bit different. So I'm just going to come up here and I'm going to say the headers. And we can do it this, or we can do it with a single declaration. I think in this case, since we're only styling that, I'll just do it this way. Header H1. And we can just do this with text line. The header H1 always takes up the whole width. We're just saying that the text within the header should be centered. So that's looking a little bit nicer. Let's go down to add form here and make this stuff look a little bit nicer. So input, we're going to say grows, but also let's make it like a little bit nicer of a box here. We can do that by adding some padding. This might be a little bit much, maybe not. That's okay. All right, and then we can put a border on it of 1 pixel, solid, and then use that same thing we did below. Okay, and then round out that border as well. So radius. If we want it like completely rounded to go with the way we've been doing things, yeah, let's do this because this will bring up an interesting thing we can do. So we can do that. That'll round both. Now, let's round up the button, and then we're going to take care of the fact that that button should kind of look attached. We'll get it in just a moment. So first, let's go to the button and just give that a similar border and border radius. And now the button looks circular. Now the problem here is that I want these like kind of joined. So what I'm saying is actually that border radius on the input box, I only want it on the top left and the bottom left. So there is a longer border radius. I think it works like this. Top left. Okay, so now, did I do it wrong? Border. If it's back here, border, top, left, radius. Okay, so now just that is kind of circled there. So we want top left and bottom left. Bottom. Okay, so now that is square on the right edge, which is what we want. And then for the button, we want to do the opposite. So I'm going to do just the top right. right, okay. And now that's kind of nudged up together. Now the ed's a little bit short there, so we can fix this a number of ways. Probably the least hackish way is to put a padding here on the right. Actually, I don't know if you'd call this not hackish, but it's one way to do it. All right, and then we can just totally think it looks good. I think I want less. Really, how much we want kind of has to do with the border radius. So if we figured out the real height of this, calculated the border radius, we could probably do a nicer job there, but good enough. Now, we could get rid of this outline when the thing's focused if we wanted to, but I don't know if I want to do that. Having outlines for focus is a little bit nice because it does let people know if they're keyboard navigating, it lets them know where things are. But we can with CSS get rid of those or change them if we don't like them. I think these are pretty okay. And with that, I think the app is looking pretty decent now. I want to do animations and have this look a lot nicer. I want that when I delete something, it kind of collapses slowly and vanishes away instead of just abruptly going away like that. And we might want to do some animation with adding. And we might want to do something cool when they check something off or uncheck it. But right now, we are done with making this thing look reasonably decent with some styling. We did a lot of nested styling, and we have our app fully functional with not a lot of code. And I hope that my hesitations through this video weren't too distracting. My getting stuck a couple times wasn't too bad. But yeah, otherwise I hope this showed you that you can make a native app pretty simply just by writing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and not using these frameworks. And in fact, if you don't use the frameworks, it's pretty easy to kind of debug. And we can get rid of this console log, by the way, but kind of easy to debug and kind of easy to figure out what you need to do. You know, if you're not using data binding, things happen in a very deterministic order. We can see when things are getting added, when they're getting removed. When we go to update something, how does that thing get updated and changed? And we can see that a lot of this stuff for, you know, whether or not this is checked and styling it, we didn't have to write any JavaScript at all for this. We can just handle this with the fact that HTML already has a built-in element called a checkbox that has this property of being toggleable. And we can just use that and some clever CSS selectors to get that property of something being checked or not and store and style that without writing any JavaScript at all, because checkboxes already kind of let us carry that state. And that we can persist that fairly easily. Now we did it for local storage here, but as you can imagine, if you just change this save to local storage to be something that sends those all off to a server to save in a database, and you change load to go ask a server for a list of things from the database and show them that same thing. So it doesn't matter that we did local storage so much as far as turning this into something that works that way. And it has all the properties, kind of a single page app. All the interactivity and everything is done right in page. Not too much code. So hopefully that was a good little example. Like I said, next time I do want to go into the CSS because there's some neat stuff we do in script as well to get these animating nicely and get this to be an even nicer, modern looking app. And yeah, I think after this, I probably have some topics I want to talk about instead of just doing these kind of walkthroughs. I tend to fall into doing these walkthroughs just because of my background with teaching at boot camps, so a lot of demonstration type stuff like this. But I do want to do, you know, some more discussion of topics instead of just walking through how I do something. But we'll do some of that, and then at some point I'll do a bigger example with multiple pages. We'll talk about how you can use page transitions to make a site that has multiple pages, but still has that feel of a single page app. So when you're switching between the pages, you get, nice smooth transitions and no page refresh, but you get all the benefits of having your navigation in browser instead of rewriting the entire browser's navigation stack in a JavaScript framework, which is a really crazy thing that we do all the time these days that we don't need to be doing. That these SPA frameworks, among my number of problems with them, they rewrite that and turn it into something way more complicated than it needs to be. All right. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hope it wasn't too long. And like I said, sorry for meandering on things that I forgot how to do. But if as always, if you're enjoying the content, please like and subscribe. And otherwise, I will see you in the next video.